Story 1. If you have not watched it, watch the uncut broadcast on the cable satellite public affairs network to see President Biden for yourself. Do not listen to pundits. Story 2. You can't love your country only when you win. That is a powerful statement. An hour plus is a very long time to talk. I know he has experience doing it, but I can barely give a presentation on Zoom for my design work for 30 minutes. I can do it. It's just unbelievably stressful to maintain a narrative. That's a skill. I know the man is old and has a lot of help crafting this speech, but I think he nailed it. Plus, it's not people like me he needs to convince to vote for him. I already am. I hope this speaks to people who are on the fence. Story 3. The best moment came when he was talking about the bipartisan border deal and Republican attendees began heckling him. As he listed the aspects of the deal, the camera cut to Jamie Langford, the Republican senator from Oklahoma who had crafted the legislation and was later censured, nodding and muttering that it was true. Story 4. Did you see the Speaker of the House nod in disgust at everything President Biden says? Story 5. I want to raise teacher salaries. I do too. Meanwhile, in Tulsa, the city is voting on raising the mayor's salary from $110,000 per year to $190,000 per year because of inflation. Story 6. I applauded at my screen when he talked about removing junk fees, especially when he said he would require cable and ticket companies to show the final cost up front. Story 7. Katie Britt's rebuttal was epic, like a Stephen King demon trying to reassure everyone it was human and would not eat their livers while they slept. Story 8. I found it ironic that Marjorie Taylor Greene wanted President Joe Biden to say the name of a woman who was murdered by an undocumented immigrant, and he used her death to point out that they would not vote on an immigration reform bill. Story 9. I enjoyed it when his populist proposals were booed and he just smiled, as if it were checkmate. It made me feel that democracy is still breathing. Story 10. I thought he did great. Marjorie looked ridiculous and was an embarrassment to her party. Her interruption backfired big time. Story 11. Aside from occasional hiccups, I think the speech was great. Even Mike Johnson agrees with many of his points. Marjorie Taylor Greene is the typical clown, but it looked like President Biden was ready with a witty comeback. The Republican response was pathetic, with bad acting and a melodramatic, over-the-top performance. I have seen better acting in elementary school plays. Story 12. Rope-a-dope. After the commentary last month, I thought he would get lost on the way to the podium and not be able to put words together. Instead, Dark Brandon showed up with a flamethrower, and for contrast it was followed by youthful Katie Britt in the weirdest political video I have ever seen. In summary, it looks like this old man still has it. Story 13. Biden was too loud, too rude, and relentlessly political, said Republicans who support an even louder and ruder candidate. He did fine. Story 14. As I am not American, I did not watch the entire speech. My Dutch newspaper gave a positive review, calling him fiery, clear-headed, passionate, and combative. I had some spare time and watched the highlights. Who is the man seated behind President Biden? He repeatedly shook his head when President Biden spoke about safeguarding democracy, standing for equality, and at several other points in the speech. He appeared impetuous and obstinately remained seated while the woman next to him stood, as if he were being berated. Why did he behave that way? Story 15. He did well to mention that at one point he was called too young for the Senate. I had not heard him use that retort, but I thought it projected strength into one of his biggest weaknesses. Story 16. I work with dementia patients. You could not, even for 2 minutes, make them, with any combination of drugs, speak coherently for over an hour about multiple subjects, even with a teleprompter. I would hope the State of the Union address would show that claims of dementia are completely false. But I would say that Donald Trump falls into the same category. He does not have dementia either. Slinging accusations back and forth just gives people the wrong impression of how devastating dementia is. Story 17. I thought he knocked it out of the park, and the cherry on top was the ooh, I'm so scared look he gave Marjorie Taylor nutjob when he came face to face with her. Story 18. I was very apprehensive that this would, in any way, make him look good. To my surprise, he delivered the best State of the Union address of his presidency. For the first time, I feel more confident in my decision to vote for him. Let's be honest, it's about the people he surrounds himself with, and I can't deny his cabinet kept the country afloat when he was handed a difficult situation. To be clear, I am not his superfan, but I am very concerned this country is pouring attention into psychos like the North Carolina governor who won the Republican primary and all these other far-right extremists who just yell, capitalize on fear, and attract attention, which in turn attracts votes. So Biden better keep it together this year. Story 19. It was good. He did great. He even went back and forth with some hecklers and stayed with it. I can only hope I'm that coherent when I'm his age. The rebuttal was comical. A woman in a kitchen reading a teleprompter, looking like a B-level actress, offering no policy details and simply instilling fear while trying to ignore that Trump supporters killed a border deal. Story 20. As a Republican, my biggest complaint was the disrespect. When President Biden said something people in the room did not agree with, they would boo or shout. Even if you do not agree with him, he is still the president and leader of the country, and he should be able to speak without interruption. Story 21. Completely normal presidential tone and content from the pulpit. Coherent, politically correct, and confident. It was nice to listen to a speech and hear solid leadership. Reassuring. Story 22. I was a registered Republican for over 30 years. I am so tired of the Republican Party licking Trump's ass. It is long past time to do what is right for the country. Dump Trump. Work with your rivals, especially when they meet you more than halfway. Story 23. I'm not an anxious person, but I found myself nervously thinking, please don't screw this up, my friend. Story 24. There is a contingent of people who are on the fence about voting for Joe Biden but who are actively disinclined to vote for Donald Trump. They will not vote for Donald Trump, but for one reason or another they cannot or will not commit to Joe Biden. Among that group, the number one issue I have observed is his age and mental acuity. For me, it is a third or fourth concern, but for more moderate voters his age is a very big deal, and rightly so. Biden was downright spry last night. If his speech and performance did not reassure most of those worried about his age and capacity, then they were probably never genuinely concerned about those issues. Story 25. I've typically voted Libertarian, but this year I may vote for Dark Brandon. Russia's expansionism in Ukraine is serious enough that he is the only hope we have for peace in Europe, especially given how extreme the grand old party, Republican Party, is right now. Story 26. I had started to worry that voices like Ezra Klein were right. He was hiding because he had declined to campaign much. Holy shit, that guy brought it. He was the rhetorical equivalent of floating like a butterfly and stinging like a bee. Story 27. It was the moment that utterly and definitively ended the narratives that Biden is too old or has dementia. He is not too old and does not have dementia. Tonight, every major news organization is scrambling to grasp at trivial claims, such as that Biden has too much earwax, because they have nothing else after that State of the Union address. It will also be remembered not only for how good it was but for how completely bizarre and out of touch the Republican rebuttal was afterward. Seriously, sending Karen to the kitchen and having her complain about her feelings? I could almost believe it was deliberate sabotage because nothing else makes sense. Story 28. He absolutely crushed it. Will it sway any voters? No. Will it energize his base to vote? Yes. Story 29. I have been very upset about the government's political climate since 2016. I had no interest, and to be honest, I clicked the live feed by accident. I was having dinner anyway, so why not? I ended up watching most of it. I really hope they can pull it off. They have a solid plan for the future if they can execute it. There is a lot stacked against that team, both with the situation in the Middle East and with other issues that older generations oppose. Story 30. I liked it. I went in thinking the main character would be old and boring. Instead, he came out swinging and I ended up pumped to fight fascists. Story 31. I was feeling discouraged about my presidential choice and delayed filling out my primary ballot this week. But the State of the Union address gave me some peace of mind and reinforced President Biden's vigor and fitness. I was quite moved. Story 32. It went great. I love that Mike Johnson looked like a constipated youth pastor, laughing out loud. Story 33. I was told Biden was a doddering old man unable to string a sentence together. I want my money back. Story 34. He did well overall. His energy, passion, and dedication to doing his best for all Americans came through despite a long-standing stutter and being 81. He also demonstrated leadership, the ability to navigate the political minefields of a divided government, and the willingness to call people out and stand up for what is right. Story 35. Even though I am strongly opposed to Trump and the Make America Great Again movement, and I will vote for Joe Biden again, I sometimes forget he is not the senile old man many memes and media portray him as. Tonight was a nice reminder of who he is. Story 36. I am a card-carrying Republican, and I have to say he did very well. He was in the right frame of mind and avoided his typical gaffes. I believe his performance may affect the polls. Story 37. The choice is between a perfectly fine president who may be a little too old or a dictator who wants to destroy our republic for the financial and personal gain of himself and his cronies. Story 38. Amazing. Lower insulin prices and federal marijuana reform. He has my vote. Story 39. If you contrast this speech with Trump's Super Tuesday speech, it is as if they are speaking about two different countries and, really, two different languages. Biden is honest about the challenges and optimistic about the future. Trump is all doom and gloom, claiming that only he can somehow, with no details, right the ship before total disaster. Biden did great. Story 40. As someone who is not tied to a political party, last night proved that the current Republican Party is an embarrassing mess. Voting for Democrats is the best option for our country until it returns to its previous principles. Story 41. The most important thing was how he delivered it. I know how to recognize dementia, and this is not it. Story 42. I have explained it to my friends that this is the first time in a long time a sitting politician actually made me feel good and confident. I have my critiques of his policies, but overall I was taken aback by how proud and reassured I felt. Story 43. It was worth it to watch his takedown of the Supreme Court of the United States. For far too long, those justices acted as if they were above reproach. It was satisfying to see them scolded in front of the nation and forced to sit there and take it. Joe Biden spoke for many of us in that moment, and I thank him. Story 44. Get my man a glass of water. He was dropping bombs on the Republican Party all night. I loved it, but I also hate the Republican Party because of everything they stand for. Story 45. I saw this the other day and thought a lot about it last night. The choice in Joe Biden versus Donald Trump is not between a Democrat and a Republican. It is between a rational old man surrounded by high-quality public policy advisors and an unhinged anarchist who wants to torch democracy and surrounds himself with loons. I am not going to argue that Democrats do not have a few corrupt loons. Looking at you, Senator Menendez, but few of Donald Trump's former cabinet secretaries want anything to do with him. In the immortal words of Bill Engvall, there is your sign. Story 46. I think the president delivered a great speech. He made convincing points about his progress thus far and emphasized what still needs to be done. He did not seem sleepy to me. Story 47. I think he did a good job. Lord knows I could not carry the weight that he carries. There are things I disagree with him on, but he has my support and my vote. Story 48. I was worried we were going to get Sleepy Joe. Instead, we got Dark Brandon. I'm so proud to be voting Democrat in November. Story 49. I was pleasantly surprised by how fiery Biden was. He came out swinging, and every time Republicans tried to derail his speech, he owned them with a crushing soundbite. He showcased just how fucking dumb most of the Republicans in that room are. I especially loved when the Republican Party verbally denied something he said, and he replied, "Check the numbers." I just wish he had said something like, "Google it." Story 50. I thought the heckling was disrespectful, rude, and more suited to a bar. Considering the source, I believe that is where the hecklers belong, not in Congress. President Biden did well. Story 51. You could tell it was effective by how the grand old party pivoted from their old, weak, and senile talking points to saying he was angry and loud. Story 52. I caught myself saying fuck yeah a couple of times. I thought he did really well. He contrasted himself with Mango Mussolini. He showed energy and had quick comebacks for the hecklers. He seemed to be enjoying himself. I have missed this version of Joe Biden. Story 53. A lot better than this phony-ass acting performance of a Republican rebuttal happening right now. Story 54. I am a Biden hater and I am gonna say it went pretty well, to be honest. Story 55. I only caught about half of it. The first moment I turned it on, he yelled that he would not stand for the rhetoric that immigrants are poisoning the blood of America. That was a powerful moment, and he did a fantastic job afterward. Story 56. He did a fantastic job. He articulated his vision and his outstanding milestones. With a majority in the House, he has accomplished a lot. I like that he highlighted the hypocrisy and shortcomings of the Republican Party. I was disappointed by the late attempt to address Gaza. While it may be diplomatic to approach it that way, I think applying pressure to Israel by imposing tariffs and limiting funding would be a better way to send a message without deploying troops. Nonetheless, the government is a toxic pool of petty grown-ups playing the blame game at the country's expense. I really do not understand why they will not introduce the best bills to prepare Americans and the next generation for success. It used to be the United States versus the world. Now we are the suppressors, and the greatest threat to our democracy is ourselves. A vote for Donald Trump would send us back to the dark ages, and women would be in great danger. Story 57. Mike Johnson is up there with a look on his face that says, I am sorry, but we are denying your mortgage application. Story 58. People who want to hate Biden are still going to do so. Nothing will change that. Hopefully those on the fence will see he still has the mental capacity to do the job. Story 59. I don't know or care. Biden could have drooled through the whole thing, and I still wouldn't vote for a piece of shit like Trump. Story 60. After watching, I still don't like how old he will be, but I feel much better about his ability to process information. It may have been on a teleprompter, but a man over 80 with a history of stuttering getting through a 90-minute speech with few gaffes is impressive. If you have policy concerns about him, they remain, but he is not nearly as deteriorated as people made him out to be. Story 61. You can't love your country only when you win. At least Joe understands something about America and our forefathers' dream. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.